California has to drive the carbon out of its economy in the next 35 years, substantially. And it goes back to the 4 sectors and back to the 10 or so policies. So the good news is we have a portfolio of great policies, and we have a progressive government here. The bad news is we trip over our own shoelaces. We get caught up in silly things. That's one part of the bad news. The other part of the bad news is that you can let me talk about the easiest thing of those 4 to do is to decarbonize the grid. We can decarbonize the grid in California by 2050, period. That's a big deal because the grid is not just power plants, it's everything, right? Almost everything. The second easiest thing is to decarbonize vehicles. A third thing that's really easy is to decarbonize new buildings. New buildings should be zero net energy starting yesterday. Industry's hard and old buildings are hard. But if you make the grid zero carbon, that takes you into industry and buildings, because what do they use? They use electricity, right? Not only, but significantly. So decarbonizing the grid is step number 1. We've discovered in California that you can put 25 or 30% renewable energy onto the grid without really worrying about it. Now, renewable energy is hard to manage because the sun goes down at night and because the wind stops blowing, and yet we need everything to work. And you cannot lose electricity supply for 1 damn second without crashing the whole thing. And you cannot just isolate and say, well, we have a little problem over here. I mean, the system is deeply interconnected. There was a blackout in India that affected 600 million people. Imagine that, right? Or you remember when the East Coast blacked out a while ago because one tree fell on one wire. Those are things we can fix. The point, though, is to go from 30% renewables to 50 or 70% renewables, you have to fundamentally rethink the grid. You have to rethink dispatch, you have to rethink power markets, you have to manage demand in concert with supply. You have to have some power plants that you can kick on instantly and then shut down instantly because the sun went down, but it's still hot, and so you need air conditioners to run. You have to pre-cool buildings. There's a suite of half a dozen options that are generally inexpensive and proven and practical, but for which there is not yet a significant either market or regulatory regime to drive them. So we do not yet live in a world that's going to easily accommodate very large fractions of renewables. It's not easy to do this right. And here's the main reason I despaired at Paris. 40,000 people came. And I'll guarantee you there weren't 40 who know how to draft a building code. And there weren't 200 that know how to draft a utility reg. But that's what it has to come down to, right? And that's what CEERT's all about. What CEERT does, day in and day out, is essentially coach, cajole, connive, command the regulators to move and envision the brave new world. CEERT gets out ahead of them and sees where they are and brings them along. And sometimes it's through legislative deals, sometimes it's through regulatory deals, sometimes it's through analytic exercises. But basically, even in maybe especially a state as sophisticated and complicated as California, there's got to be not just a beacon of what can be done, but the step-by-step map of how to get it done. And it's not a job for amateurs. It's not a fly-by-night job, right? It's not a protest, divest. That's not the thing. It's the nuts and bolts of the economy. And you can't get it wrong. You remember, we got it wrong once, California. That set us back about a decade, right? A couple blackouts. If we get blackouts and they're blamed on wind energy or solar energy, can you imagine what that's going to do to our prospects for decarbonizing this economy? We lose. If California can't do it and if Germany can't do it, you watch the others walk away from their commitments. If we do a good job of it, do it economically, do it practically, make it affordable and reliable as well as clean, they'll be rushing to our doors just like they want to be part of Silicon Valley and they want to be part of Hollywood and they want, all the other magnets here. We'll create another huge magnet. And it's very clear to me now that we have to take a very big step in the regulation of the electric grid. And if we do that, we will make this far faster and far easier than I think anyone anticipates. So thank you.